I'm so excited for this opportunity to get to talk about this drawing show that Matthew curated. It's just a stellar selection of works on a magnificent installation. So if you haven't checked out the installation images, I'm going to get to show you some later. And it's a great complementary show to the painting show that's at Van Doren Waxter. Tworkov believed that no artist is an artist all himself, and the continual interaction of ideas among artists is a very condition of the existence of an artist. And I think this kind of forum and discussions and talking really is something that continues that kind of interaction. So my whole plan tonight, Matthew, got a little messed up because yesterday, the San Francisco Art Institute emailed me. They had found a lost lecture by Jack Tworkov from 1977. Ding, ding, ding. So I'm hoping that tonight in my presentation, we'll be able to actually hear words Jack speaking. I've clipped some things, relevant material to what I'm going to try to pull together here. So like Matthew said, I've been at the helm of the estate of Jack Tworkov since 2002, quite a long time. And, it's been an amazing experience. And then what makes it even more amazing is to be so enmeshed in the artist's life that you get a new recording like this, and it just upends all of your research, and you have to go back and redo chronologies and all kinds of different things. Anyway, I pulled together, I thought, what I would do is sort of introduce Jack Tworkov and get us up to speed the 70s and then start a conversation. I am going to try to do the share screen thing now. Let's try this.
Looks good.
All right, so another fantastic thing that happened just this last summer was that I discovered a roll of film by Norma Holt. And so these photographs were all taken by Norma at the Provincetown studio in September of 1978. And a number of them are featured in our catalog that we produced in collaboration with the Van Doren Waxter. Our Jack Tworkov story really begins in September 26, 1913. The 13-year-old Jack Tworkov arrived in America from Biała, Poland, with his younger sister and their mother. They reunited with their father, who had opened a small tailor shop, and the family resided on Ridge Street in Manhattan's Lower East Side. Like many immigrants arriving from New York from all ports around the world, Jack struggled to assimilate to America, American culture at the turn of the century. The first years in New York, he said, I remember as the most painful in my life. Everything I loved in my childhood, I missed in New York. Everything that had been painful in my childhood grew to distressing proportions. In this new land, I had to face a new culture and adolescence at the same time. But what saved me was reading. Jack learned English in a public school with the help of a sympathetic librarian, a window which opened up the world, he said. He also said he read everything within reach. English, French, and Russian literature. He read at night at times and sat my days in school, as he said, listless and drowsy. He was enrolled in grammar school and skipped several grades, and then attended Stuyvesant High School, and there, at the urging of a mechanical drawing teacher, he attended a sketch class after school, but he still aspired to become a poet. His younger sister, Janice, and they moved out of their parents' house as soon as they could, and they found refuge in Greenwich Village. And it was around that time that the pair reclaimed their family name as Tworkov. Jack, again, had early aspirations to become a writer and entered Columbia College. However, the first time encounter with the work of Cezanne in 1921 exhibition of French painting at the Brooklyn Museum, which was actually the first time that French painting, European painting, was on view in America, it proved life-changing. Cezanne became Tworkov's path to painting. Just as they were discovering Cezanne, Jack and Janice walked into the winter exhibition at the National Academy of Design and discovered the paintings of Edwin Dickinson. Here's Edwin Dickinson, and this is the painting they saw. It's called Anniversary. It's at the collection of the Albright Knox Gallery. According to Jack, Janice thought that she would like to study with him. So his studio was in Provincetown, and she decided she wanted to hitchhike there. Jack said, I didn't want her to go hitchhiking by herself, so I decided to go along with her. And they ended up using Provincetown as a home base. This is a photograph of by Jack on the left, and a painting by Jack on the right, which is in the Yellowstone Art Museum. Biala was attracted to the technical aspects of composition, becoming an understudy to Dickinson. But for Tworkov, his introduction to modern painting came from Karl Knaus. Here he is pictured here. By 1926, these are a self-portrait by Jack Tworkov and a self-portrait by Janice Biala. By 1926, Jack was exhibiting regularly in New York and Provincetown, and Janice was doing quite well herself. She changed her name just to Biala as a way to distinguish herself from her brother, and this was at the suggestion of the sculptor William Zorak. The majority of Tworkov's paintings at this time could be called categorically social realist, yet work demonstrates an acute affinity for abstraction through the simplifications of subjects. Obviously, this beautiful still life with peaches, reminiscent and reflecting his appreciation of Cezanne. Here's Fisherman's Family from 1931. Tworkov joined the Works Art Project in 1934 and stayed on until 1941. And it was there that he would meet the artists Mark Rothko and Willem de Kooning, among others. Jack married he married Rachel Wolodarski, known as Wally, and the couple shared an interest in leftist politics. They had met at a Russian language class in 1932, and here they are at the zoo, and you can see their oldest daughter, Hermine, hanging on the fence. Here's the family here. Jack and Wally had two daughters, Hermine and Helen. Um, 1941, as World War II began, Jack Tworkov dropped out of the art scene and decided that he wanted to dedicate everything he could to the war relief. And so he worked as a tool designer, designing tools. And this was for the Eastern Engineering Company. It's very interesting when you think about the mechanicalness of the drawings that are on view at meticulousness of the drawings that are on view at Minuspace, with this kind of early mechanical affiliation in drawings. After the war, Tworkov resumed painting, and how he entered back into the world of painting at the time was through common themes of still life, portraiture, and landscape. He said, I toy with the idea that maybe the only way to break down the walls of the familiar experience is through a re-experience of the familiar. Here's some early still lifes. And when he had the opportunity to show these at his first one-man show at Charles Egan Gallery in 1947, he chose to show these still lifes rather than the abstractions that he was working on. And to his dismay, it seemed that all of art history pushed him back a whole decade and wasn't associated immediately with what was happening with the abstractionists of the late 30s and early 40s. Here's Green Landscape. He talked about sticking his face right into the landscape and trying to work his way out. This was the first painting purchased by a museum in America. Went to the Baltimore Museum on the occasion of his first one-man show in a museum in 1948. Here he is at his studio, 85 4th Avenue. Famously, de Kooning had taken the space. It was a second floor walk-up, cold water flat. And de Kooning split the space in half, and Jack rented one side and de Kooning rented the other. We'll get to hear a little bit about that later from Jack. Of course, he was one of the most intellectual of this group. He could out-talk anybody intellectually. So here they all gathered at the Cedar Bar. We've got Charlotte Brooks, Jack Tworkov, Mercedes Matter, James Brooks, Giorgio Cavallon, Philip Guston, the back of his head. This is by a photo by John Cohen. And as these artists continued to meet at the cafe, their friendships evolved, their conversations exploded, and these ideas ran rapid in their canvases. I'm going to move on to the next. Here's Jack's mixing up paint. It's a very interesting, very kind of technical. All the photos of Jack always seemed like he's hovering over a palette, which isn't the way that a lot of abstract expressionists are represented. You think of artists just grabbing paint wherever they can get it, but Jack was a strong colorist from the very beginning, and really was determined to mix paint. He never really was able to get away from the easel. Here's Pink Mississippi, 1954. Around this time, his notoriety started to rise by these flame-like gestural strokes. Of course, abstract expressionism, the terminology behind abstract expressionism and the energy behind it is really starting to evolve in New York. Here's Duo number 1, 1956. This is in the collection of the Whitney Museum. I want us all to look at the top of the painting. There's these divisions that he started putting in here. This is a graphite line that he was doing to mark up, graphed out how he was going to deal with the abstraction and the brush. He wanted the limitation of this line. And so, you know, in the dialogues that I've had over the years, people say, well, his style, his technique changed drastically. And I can say, look at Duo number 1, and you can see how he's created these, delineated these spaces where the abstraction or the action can happen. He's so pensive. Here we go. There you go. There's Jack, pensive in front of the painting. Games 3, same thing. Look at that line up there on the horizon. It's a graphite line that he's drawn. And then the action can happen in other kinds of spaces, other places. It's a way of measuring this mark in a way. The prevailing mood of these compositions suggests an action in a noiseless landscape, he said. I think my paintings as a kind of deliberate, open-eyed speaking, not song, not outcry. The rhythm and tone of my work neither protests life nor sings of it. It merely tries to be like it. Again, if we're working backwards from Matthew's show at Minus Space, and you can see how the line becomes very refined in these later works, but then less defined, but still very much there. This is Crest from 1957-58. It was about this time that he had 2 really important manifestos. The first one, he said, my hope is to confront the picture without any ready technique or prepared attitude. So kind of coming to the canvas with no preconceived ideas. And the second was he was against the extremes. I am for the extreme of the middle, the creative middle. And I think that that is an interesting moment in Jack's time moment in his artist's life, in that he's starting to see that there was a great extreme. There's this huge push for abstract expressionism. And by the time 1958 rolls around, everybody's doing it. And it became, he needed to distance himself from that. You know, when you try to, he wanted to move away from that program. He felt like approaching the canvas without any preconceived ideas is just like going to the canvas with a preconceived idea. So we'll get to that in a minute. But here you go. Here's this chart. This is now charcoal in East Barrier. You can see the lines driven up. He loved this East Barrier idea because he was pushing all the activity off the canvas. He says here, I was torn between the calligraphic and the structural, the exuberance of movement and the rigors of meditation. Here we have Thursday, kind of a washed out photo. Sorry, guys. The top has, you know, some charcoal lines delineating it. Friday, 1960. Again, that line's coming in. West 23rd is kind of, I like to think of it as the final moment. This is like, I'm getting it all out in this work and I'm going to leave it all behind. I'm going to drop the mic and move right on. He said at this time, I think I've arrived. I'm sorry. I think the time has arrived for me to do my best work of my life. I feel like a confident boxer. And so 1963, okay. He leaves his gallery, he leaves Leo Castelli, and he takes a job working as just a job. He became the chair of the art department at the Yale University, and really threw his whole passions and interdisciplinary affiliations into this job, bringing in working artists from New York into spend time with. I don't want to use the word teach. Spend time with younger artists who were there to learn. And so people were really learning by not through the Albers sort of rhythm and pace and schooling and technique. They were learning through talking and interacting with artists outside of the curriculum. And during that time, he really started to figure out, like, he had the time, he had the money, so that he didn't have to show work. He didn't exhibit for about 4 or 5 years. And he started to embrace more of a geometric, more structural systems in applying them and making them more readily seen in his paintings. He never wanted to leave the spontaneity, but he wanted something else to push against. So these structures start to fall into place in his work. It was also about this time that he developed a new medium. And that medium becomes the most, the fullest potential of this medium is expressed in this work. It's called Idling No. 2. Actually, there's 3 paintings, Idling 1 and 2 and 3. And there are these 3 paintings that really develop that huge transition. It's the complete arrival of Jack Tworkov in his most mature state. This is 1970. Now we're going to see if this works. So I have to forgive the recording, but we're going to try to hear from Jack. Let's see if we can do it.
I use lucite, dissolved in turpentine as a medium, and it has good quality for what I want. Because very often I use a very fluid paint. Paint that tends to run on the canvas. At the same time, it doesn't dry flat. It holds the shape, for instance, of a drop. It doesn't dry out flat. it also, you can control the drying time. Depending on how much lucite you use, you can, for instance, paint an hour or two after your first coat. You can paint again. The bottom coat is not dry, but it doesn't pick up. So you can work rather more rapidly than you could if you used another type of medium. It's also more flexible medium than oil. I mean, it's safer, for instance, if you have to roll a canvas. I rarely do. And I also use it sometimes as a final, if the painting dries in too much. You can use it as a spray to bring out the surface again. In other words, it's like a good retouching varnish. It's really very, very good medium.
So basically what it was saying was he uses lucite dissolved in turpentine. And what that did was it gave his oil a body. It gave it a texture, it gave it a body, and it allowed him to apply a distinct mark and have that mark retained in the canvas. So those of us that have seen Jack Tworkov's work of this period, if you look really close, you can actually see, as Tworkov just described, that it actually gives you a structural layering system that you can see. It also allowed him a tremendous amount of flexibility in that he could use the color. As a colorist, he could titrate the color in the most subtle ways to create the most dramatic results. Here's this drawing, or this is a watercolor on the left. This is a watercolor that's on view at Van Doren Waxter. And here's the painting that I don't want to say was the result of, but at this moment, Tworkov really started doing preparatory sketches. Whereas before, in the 40s, 50s, he really approached the canvas without any preconceived ideas, very few studies. He attacked the canvas as it needed to be, as he emotionally wanted to have it run. He did it. And here, he really, he structures it, and he wants this kind of, the structure to be able to push up against. Let's look at the next one. So here's this is a tiny drawing here that's on view at minus space. I want us to focus on the lower left one. Here, he's starting to apply some mathematical systems like Fibonacci, where he's dividing it into 2, 3, 5, 8s. And then, with this pencil, he goes in and he indicates where he wants that brush to land. This is a small drawing. It's on graph paper. It's 8 by 11 inches. And this is an 80 by 80 inch painting, which is on view at minus space. And you can see how he's structured. He has very, very clearly structured from the drawing into the painting. And this is using that new lucite material. He had been working with it at this point for about nearly 10 years. It doesn't have a glossy finish. It has a very matte finish. And again, it allows him to really use his ability to mix color. So somebody in this lecture asked him if they could describe this remarkable change in his art. Let's hear.
Can you describe the rather remarkable change in your work from the early 50s to what you're doing now, from absolute freedom of movement to total constriction and planes and architectural scales?
Yeah, well, I've worked a long time the other way, and after a while, what seems like a spontaneous style, if you keep on working it, becomes another style of working. And something of that spontaneity gets lost. And you use a certain kind of spontaneous style because you're always hoping that the unexpected will come up. And so on. But after a while, it seems like the same damn thing comes up again and again. also the style became universal, and so much of it, was taken up in every school all over the world practically, that it exhausted itself. I mean, it was very difficult to see freshly that way. So around the beginning of the 60s, I began to look for a way out. And I wish I could have shown you some of the transitional painting of that period. I tried many different things, and some of it was quite awful. And really the origin of these structure things came about really rather an interesting way for me. When I began to sort of go away from the spontaneous, I asked myself, what mark can you make on a piece of paper that is really dictated by the shape of the paper, that is not arbitrary? And I played around for a long time, and then the obvious thing occurred to me. It must have occurred to a million other people before, but it was new for me, is that a diagonal is the only line given in a rectangle. The only line that is not arbitrary, that is determined by the rectangle. And this idea really puzzled me, and I was then started to look, isn't there another one? Turns out there really isn't, And I played with this for a long time, and I said, well, I'd like to make one other line that has some reference to the rectangle, besides the diagonal. So the only other line that occurred to me was a line that I drew from one corner to the diagonal, so it met the diagonal at a 90-degree angle, because that repeated the corner, the 90-degree corner, inside the rectangle. And when I did that, again, I was like the guy inventing the wheel all the time. I mean, I later on found out it was done and done many times, but honestly, it was new for me. When I drew that line to meet the diagonal at 90 degree, and then extended it so it met the other side, I found out at that point, if you drew then from that point a horizontal line parallel to the bottom of the rectangle, that you got a proportionate rectangle, the same as the rectangle you began with, but instead of lying vertical, it now lay horizontal.
I think that's just remarkable to be able to hear Jack talk about how he really was rediscovering art at 65, 67, 68, and how mathematics and geometry and the simple mathematics of a painting can start to, change, make a new direction for him, coupled with the fact of the medium. This is a beautiful installation shot of the show. I'm going to look through a couple of these now. Again, a lot of these works have never been seen publicly before. It's not that Jack didn't deem them, exhibition ready. It's just that there hasn't been a lot of interest in that kind of discovery. These three over here, the darker ones, are all charcoal drawings. And they're the earliest ones in the exhibition from the 1971, 1970. Here they are. So you can see the subtle mark making as well. He learned that when you make one mark and put it closer to the other, that area looks denser. And so he really started playing with that and wanted to apply that to the paintings. This is a beautiful installation here of three works. This is one of my favorites. He never stopped thinking about how, when he talked about how it was old, how, you're drawing a line that is simply divides a canvas, and then another line that comes up to meet it in 90 degrees. You can see that happening in the lower left in this work here. And then the whole Fibonacci numbering system and the golden ratio and all of that stuff starts to really just spiral in his work. Here is one of the earliest drawings for the Night series, which is one of the most prominent series that he developed in the mid-70s. It is all based on the movement of the night. To my understanding, he wasn't an avid chess player, but he found the idea of the chessboard and the maverick move of the horse in chess to be to encourage a lot of great kind of compositions. There's a whole wall at the gallery of these drawings. Again, here's some more of the studies. There's the drawings of the movements of the night. And I have paired one up here. This is left one is at minus space, and the right one is the finished painting. It's 90 by 75 inches. Enormous painting at 75. So Jack is painting this when he's at 75 years old. Just really stunning color. So just two more if you can humor me. Can I get a thumbs up if we want to hear Jack? Okay, here we go. I don't want to bore you. So somebody in this group at this lecture said, "So Jack, what's your painting really about?" Here we go.
What is your painting really about?
I had thought about it just in case somebody asked. Actually, I would say about nothing. If anybody would ever ask me, what does the painting mean? I would say it doesn't mean. Yeah. But I did think of something. I asked myself, really, what it meant. And I would say that painting for me means the acquiring of energies for myself. I think people often talk about painting as expressing something. The word abstract expressionism is a horrible word. It's a horrible thing. It's not a question of expressing, but it's a question of taking in, of energies that you take in through the doing of the thing.
I love that. Then somebody in the work said, "What do you think others feel about your work?" Kind of the same question, but asked differently.
Oh, I can't gauge how others feel. I can only gauge for myself. It's enough for myself. But of course, you'd hope that it worked for others. And occasionally, you get the impression that it works for others, not for everybody. I had a recent experience that rather startled me a little bit. I had this exhibition in Santa Barbara. And I expect that a few people liked my painting. Many people are indifferent to it. But what I didn't expect is when someone told me they absolutely hated it. I was really startled and pleased by it, Yeah, because I hadn't thought that my painting is capable of evoking that kind of strong response. But then it reminded me of something that I remember I used to have a studio next door to the Koenings. And I'd sometimes stop there on my way into the studio and we'd talk a little bit. And once I came in, there was a critic there, critic friend. And the Koenig had been working on this first of those women pictures. And he had worked on it an awful long time. Everybody was getting weary of it, including the Koenig and so on. And literally, the painting was in work over a year. And I remember Bill standing in front of the paintings, and the critic was looking at the picture. And he said, don't touch it. He said, don't touch it. It's a masterpiece. It's terrific. This is perfect. Don't touch it. and then he said goodbye and he left. And Bill looked absolutely downcast. And he said to me, now I have to start all over again. So that's what I mean, that if someone says they hate their pain, it could be a reverse compliment.
That's all I have. That brings us to the end. Jack gets the final say this time.
Thank you, Jason. That was an extraordinary overview in a very short amount of time. The fact that you were able to insert those, I don't know how everyone else feels about this in the group, but the fact that you were able to insert his voice into this presentation was very moving for me personally. So thank you for that.
Well, I mean, you know, all of the recordings I've been able to discover by Jack are it's very hard to very low talker in a way, I guess is what you would say. No offense to all of us loud talkers, but you know, very hard to record his voice. And this was and as I said, I just heard this yesterday. So I'm thrilled I get to share this with everybody. And it fit right in, didn't it? It fit right in.
It absolutely did. So thank you for that. So I'm keeping an eye on the time.
Yeah, sorry.
No, this is absolutely marvelous. I think what we should do now is just turn it over to our group here to see if there are thoughts or questions or anecdotes or footnotes that anyone would like to add in here. I see I've got my chat field open. If you guys want to open that up, I'll keep an eye regarding questions coming in. But if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself or raise your virtual hand. You can do that by scrolling over the bottom of your screen and clicking reactions at the bottom. You can give us a raised hand or chat into the chat field or just dive right in. But if there are thoughts, feel free. I'll turn it over to all of you. And I will kill some time here in a positive way by noting that Mira Shore is here. So Mira, thank you for joining us. And although the book is downstairs at the moment, I just wanted to put a shout out for your lovely and incredibly interesting publication, Jack Tworkov Writings. It is out. It's 3 inches thick. It's exhaustive. So if you want to hear Jack and Jack's own voice over the years, that publication, oh, there you go. Thank you so much, Jason, for grabbing that. It is out, and definitely pick up a copy. I was able to purchase it through, I think, Amazon was the only place that actually had it or something similar to that. So just wanted to give a shout out to Mira. So there was a hand raised. Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, no, go ahead. Questions.
Sharon, did you have a hand raised? Go right ahead.
I just wanted to say that when I think of his paintings, I never met him personally, but when Soho was at its highest, when it first started, that's just after I got into New York. I came to New York in '66. So then Soho started up, and there was the Susan Caldwell Gallery on West Broadway. And I remember every time there was a Jack Tworkov show, I had to go see it to see what is he doing. You know, maybe you see a new painting. And for some reason, I always remembered going to see his shows there at Susan Caldwell.
It was actually Nancy Hoffman. Susan was just around the corner.
Didn't he show upstairs? But upstairs at Susan Caldwell, didn't he show there?
No.
No, I'm mistaken.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
That's okay. It's all right. There were a lot of people in that 480 West Broadway. It was Leo Castelli was in that building. Who else? Sona Bent was in that building.
That's 420. 420.
420. Yeah.
420.
Nancy was across the street at 429.
Oh, 429. Thanks, Dorsey.
We'll get it together.
Yes, exactly.
A little here, a little there.
There's some other questions coming in. I see Sandy Gross has asked the question of whether or not the BMA, Baltimore Museum of Art, still has the painting that you showed. Jason, still in their collection?
It's still there. It still is there. They haven't sold it yet.
That's great.
It's still there. It's
Thank
still
goodness.
there. And I just understood through the Carnegie, Eric Crosby at the Carnegie Museum, that it's he actually did 4 of those paintings of the green landscape, titled Green Landscape. And one of them is now on view at the Carnegie. The other is in New Paltz at the Dorsky Museum. And the other one we don't know where it is. So, yeah, it's a beautiful painting. A lot's happening, and that's not an abstract painting. It's not an abstract expressionism that we think about. It's not, 60 inches long or 80 inches long and 40 inches high. It's like this. That's what I meant by the idea of the easel painting, that mentality.
Yeah, I love his paintings that are kind of abex, but they look like angels.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Those are from what, 53, 54?
That's right.
Yeah.
That would have been part of the, he had this Odyssey fascination. And Nausicaa is a title of one. Sirens is another. But the addressing figuration and abstraction, he worked on that for about 8 years. How far you could push the figure when you lose the figure. And in 1952, when he was at Black Mountain College, he really pushed it to the end with a series called House of the Sun, which is one of the first real big heroic series that Jack did, House of the Sun. Lots of paintings related to that. 2 lovers tumbling in space is what it really was, how he kind of described it. Yeah.
And Jason,
Thanks, Andy.
since you brought that up regarding Black Mountain, there was a question in the chat from Amanda Kemp who asks about Jack's influence on Black Mountain College, or how that started, that relationship.
Amanda, that's my sister. Hey.
Hi, Jason.
Hey. Hey, Amanda. Honestly,
I'll turn my
yes,
video
I did. I
on.
planted all of them. I made all of my siblings call in. There are 5 of us. All right. Black Mountain College, that's a really good point. Jack was a huge teacher, big noted, recognized and celebrated teacher, going all the way back to the 30s. 34, 36, 37, he was the Fielding School. He taught at Brooklyn College. He taught at Pratt. 1952, he made time for him and his entire family to go to Black Mountain College. 1952 was the summer, July. And it was only a month. He was only there a month, but he became one of the most influential teachers of the moment that time. And the letter that he wrote back to his sister, Janice, in France, was that the students were going to do more for him than he could do for them. He constantly was learning from his students. Same thing when you get fast forward 15 years-ish to mid-60s when he's teaching at Yale. Jennifer Bartlett is there, and they had a very, very rich and engaging conversation about geometry. In fact, in the catalog for the show that we have for the Van Doren Waxter show, there's a really great paragraph or 2 about Jennifer Bartlett, coming to Jack's studio, discussing the Fibonacci numbering system, and Jennifer Bartlett leaving saying, "Thanks, Jack, I'm going to use that." So, a great exchange of ideas.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Are there other questions, thoughts?
Matthew,
Go right ahead, Pat.
Jason, what is the influence on Cy Twombly of Tworkov? I seem to notice a lot of using of the markings.
Yeah. Well, I think similarly that it's a really great question. I think the art world and art history likes to see the world in a very sort of linear way. This person did this person saw it, and this person did it, and then they built on it. Kind of is a little more fluid than that. Jack in the early mid 50s started doing these very aggressive charcoal drawings. I didn't put any in my presentation, but we can look them up there, where he took the charcoal and he covered the whole page with a mark. And that really influenced, that conversation influenced Cy Twombly, I believe, who knew Jack. Cy Twombly was coming through the Tworkov family residence. He was, I think that Jack likely met Cy Twombly through Rauschenberg, the relationship with Rauschenberg. But, Cy took that mark and kind of opened it up a little bit, and Jack found a way to layer that charcoal right next to each other in a very, very dramatic way. And it was that introduction of lucite later on that it really allowed him to do that. So we have the charcoal drawings that he did in 55, but he couldn't make a painting that he appreciated and could reflect that idea for about 20 years later until he could find the medium that could do it. But that's a really good observation. Yeah. They certainly did have a conversation with each other.
Well, that early gray painting looks like, when you introduce the lucite, looks like he's almost used his grid, but used his palette knife just to pull down area color. He covered the whole painting.
Yeah, he never used a palette knife. He only used a brush, and it's a tick of the brush. It's a tache of the brush. It's like a little, like this,
It's not the end of the brush.
No. Yeah.
The nub of the brush. It looks.
No, he didn't. I don't think he ever painted like this. Hermine could tell us. Is Hermine here? Hermine, let's see if Hermine's here.
I don't see her here.
Okay, she was here a little earlier. But yeah, no, I don't.
I'm here. I'm here.
Hey, hey, Hermine.
Hi, I was hiding.
Did Jack never really painted like this?
Never. No.
Yeah.
No, I mean the end of the brush, Jason. The tip, not the brush part, but the hard part at the end. Just hold it.
No.
Okay.
No. He put the brush on the canvas and moved it, but at the same time, the paint also ran from the brush. And as Jason so wonderfully described, that lucite medium helped the paint hold its shape to sit up slightly on the canvas.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Thanks, Hermine.
Yeah, thank you, Hermine, for that. Other thoughts anyone would like to share here? As we're waiting, I have a question for you, Jason, which is regarding the invention of that sort of lucite in turpentine dissolving additive to the paint. How did he come up with that? Like, how did that happen by accident? Like what?
Well, further on in that interview that we just got yesterday, DuPont company came to Yale and offered them product. They thought that artists could use some of this product that they were using, and that included this lucite material, which is really like, it was early plastic, and he would dissolve it in turpentine, and then he would mix that in he would create, he had a formula for how liquid he wanted that material to feel. He had a very certain kind of tact and intention when he went to the canvas in that manner. He didn't want a runny painting. He wanted to still be able to control the mark, and then also know that, that mark would hold its body, maybe run a couple of inches, and then that would be the end. So he had a lot of different friends. Ralph Mayer, who was also, I think, was developing paint studies and things at Columbia, is someone who I'm trying to remember. So, when this came along for him to help introduce it to the students, he started experimenting with it as well. And that was in 1965, 66, and 67 were the first paintings we know of that actually achieved the lucite. And then you get the full body and vibrato of that.
Can you still hear me, Jason?
I can, yeah.
That lucite came in like granules.
Mm-hmm.
No, he had it in a plastic bag, and and as you said, he had a formula, and it required heat. He had a little, electric, what do you call that? Stove.
Yeah.
In his studio that he used to make it in
a hot plate kind of thing.
A hot plate.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like encaustic in a way, if you think about it. That's what I always kind of felt.
Well, encaustic is very vulnerable because wax never completely hardens.
Yeah.
Years later, what was the name of the conservator at the Chicago Art Institute? Tim. There was a conservator at the Chicago Art Institute who became who Bob and I were friends with, and he told me that medium made those paintings, invulnerable. I mean, to future damage. It was the strongest kind of thing you could possibly.
Yeah, and he said in that interview, this is really good. I don't ever roll my paintings, but if you ever wanted to roll the paintings, this would prevent that. Yeah, and I think
that wasn't the reason why he used it. It just happened to be that it was extremely strong surface.
Yeah.
Was there any kind of toxicity to it? I've always wondered about that.
No idea.
Well, melting plastic in your studio over a hot plate. I mean, come on.
I've often wondered about it in terms of Jack's health in the immediate years after that, working on those.
Yeah. It's an interesting point.
He didn't seem to, he was very, very healthy until he got sick at the end of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack passed away in 1982 and was still having the summer of his life in 81. And thanks to Mira's book, we know through his journals just how many times he swam before he went to the studio. So there you go.
So any final questions? We are a little after 8. Any final notes to share, anecdotes or thoughts?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. It's really fun to be able to have this opportunity to talk about Jack's work and to sort of breathe life into an artist that I think has been misread in art history, and it's kind of been a personal effort on my part to kind of bring in these other kinds of dialogues with Jack. How open he was to and supportive of young artists. Robert Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns, and we're working right now on we finished a lot of research on his friendship his friendship with Yayoi Kusama. That's forthcoming. There's studio visits together. But everyone go see Minus Space or go online and look at how beautiful the photography is of the drawings, which is the virtual world we all live in now.
And also go up to Dorsey's.
Go up, see the beautiful painting show before it closes next Saturday.
I want to say something as long as I'm here.
Sure.
Dorsey, you're still there. In my humble opinion, I think that's the most beautiful Tworkov show I've ever seen. The size of it, the gallery, it's exquisite. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Thank you for that public adulation. That's very sweet. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Dorsey.
Yeah.
And a big thanks to Jason for a tremendous evening together. Jason.
Yes.
Amazingly insightful.
Thank you.
Very inspiring. And again, thanks to everyone for your comments and your thoughts and for joining us. Hermine, where you went on my screen, I'm not sure. Oh, there. Now you're
I kind of blanked myself out, but Matthew, I'm not just in the business of handing out compliments, but
Let me tell you, that's
but-
true.
The show, yeah. But the two shows, your show also is exquisite. The two of them together are just absolutely wonderful.
I think that the both shows hit the spot at a particular moment where in the art, you know, in what's happening in the art world, this sort of impeccable clarity and calm and beauty of these paintings and of the drawings, which are, I haven't seen the ones at Matthew's gallery, but the ones that that Dorsey is showing they're really beautiful and make you, I don't know, it just creates a relationship to art, which is different than a lot of the work that we're seeing right now on Instagram, etc.
Thank you for that. You're absolutely true.
Yes, thank you. Thank you both for that. That's
Thank you. Thank you,
really,
Matthew.
really feels good. So Jason, thank you. I would also like to thank Dorsey personally for being such a great supporter and collaborator in making our exhibition possible. Of course, Dorsey's show continues for one more week, so don't miss it. Ours will continue through May 1st. And again, we're only open on Saturdays to the public, but I get in super early and I'm there generally super late. So let me know if you were en route. We're in Dumbo at 16 Main Street on the ground floor. One more shout out to the amazing catalog that Dorsey and Jason put together. Jason, how do we acquire copies of this great catalog? Where are they available?
You can get them on the Tworkov website,
Fabulous.
or you can also go to Artist Estate Studio that helped produce it. So
And you go to the gallery.
And go to the gallery.
You can buy them, or I'd be happy to give some to people who are enthusiasts and who are joining us this evening.
Fabulous. Thank you for that. And Mira's book as well is titled, Jason, you have it in front of you?
Oh, yes. It's the Extreme of the Middle.
Thank you. I know Michael Brennan's got it.
By Yale.
Yes, and it is available through Yale also, not just Amazon.
Yes, thank you, Mira, for that. And congratulations on a terrific publication. And that is it, everybody. So just thank you all for a wonderful evening. I love the expression, Jason, that you mentioned earlier called acquiring energies. I feel like that's what we're doing here, especially needed in these difficult COVID times that we're almost out of. But just thank you all for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you in person at the gallery. And drop us a line, whether it's online or in person, anytime. And thanks again, everybody.